All right, that's exactly what we're going to talk about is does HCR 2060, what will it do to secure the border? Joining us in studio is the Arizona Speaker of the House, Ben Toma. Speaker Toma, thanks for doing this.
Oh, happy to. Thanks.
Let's talk about this because originally 2060 has been your bill.
Right.
It went to the Senate. It had some changes, so the House had to vote on this. How contentious was the vote yesterday within the Republican caucus? I mean, how much debate was there within the Republican caucus? Okay,
so first of all, this is the biggest single issue that voters care about and have been caring about for quite some time. This and, of course, the economy are the two biggest things that we've been dealing with. And so I've said from the beginning of this session that there's no way the session is going to end before we do something big on securing the border specifically. I know people keep talking about this in the context of immigration. Obviously, immigration is what's causing the border security, or at least contributing to it in a certain way. But to me, the distinction matters, which is this really is about border security, not necessarily specifically about immigration. And by the way, I share your personal feelings on this, that I really do think that there's no way you're going to fix immigration until you fix border security. And so that's why, to me, border security is the place to start. Now, and we're having the conversation clearly, just to state the obvious, because the federal government has neglected to do their job. And so that's why we're here. Now, to answer your question directly, there have been a lot of discussions. There have been all of these bills have been started from the beginning of the session, have gone through the process. Some of them have been vetoed, as I think you know. And so this was a long conversation. I've been part of it from the beginning, working with the Senate to ensure that the different ideas that made sense all got into one package, and we got it done.
So then some of the concerns this morning on Arizona's Morning News, Sheriff Daniels from Cochise County was on. And Sheriff Daniels voiced concerns about unfunded mandates, saying his jails are already full. He's got a new jail coming online, but they're worried about having to choose between other crimes and border crimes and jail space and money. Is that a legitimate concern?
Well, in a vacuum, it is. I grant that it is. But of course, we spoke with the Yavapai County Sheriff when we went down there on Monday. As well, not Yavapai. I'm sorry, Yuma. Right. You were talking to Yavapai before.
Yeah,
so
I was
got
talking
a little
to Sheriff
confused
Rose,
there. Yeah. No. So look, we spoke to the sheriffs, and obviously, as a Republican caucus, being pro security and pro law enforcement has been a big thing for us, and our record proves it in terms of what we funded so far at the legislature. I will tell you that it is a concern. However, keep in mind that this has to go to the voters. And there are two provisions of this that would become effective right away, and that would be the E-Verify and the SAVE program piece. And also the fentanyl piece would become effective right away upon passage, if you will, effective date, which I think is January 1st. But then after that, the so-called border crime part of this that we were talking about, that will become effective only when the courts finally decide its fate, if you will, in the Texas legislation. And so that's important because for us to appropriate something sort of just before something actually happens doesn't make any sense either. So what I would say is this. The resources are there. The will is there from the Republican caucus to ensure that the sheriffs have whatever tools they need to actually get this done. And this is intended to be another tool in the toolbox.
The Speaker of the House in the Arizona State Legislature, Ben Toma, is joining us. Yesterday, I was reading some tweets. The Arizona Democratic House Democrats were tweeting out, the Arizona Education Association tweeting out, saying that this is going to lead to immigration raids and it's going to lead to racial harassment in public school campuses. Can you explain why that's not, if you believe that's not true, why that's not true, and what specifically this would do in the border piece of 2060?
Sure. Now, it seemed, I think I said yesterday on the floor something like this, they're using talking points from a different bill or from a bill that doesn't exist, because quite frankly, that's not what's in this bill. The bill has probable cause. They have to be able to prove that effectively, a law enforcement officer has to be able to prove that the individuals that crossed into Arizona from Mexico at a point other than a legal point of entry, they have to be able to prove it. Now, how do you prove it? One, you can see it. Two, the other example given in the bill is some sort of technology. In other words, it was a recording. I can prove it's you. Here's a video of it. And so then you can make an arrest based on that. And there are a few other ways to do it. Maybe there's witnesses, that sort of thing. But that's the only way to do this. This isn't about reasonable suspicion. You look different than me. You can't speak English. Any of those things. One comment that was made on the floor was something like parent-teacher conferences would become all of a sudden traps for ICE raids. I mean, that's ridiculous. For one, you don't know when the person crossed. You don't know if they crossed at an illegal point of entry. By the way, if they crossed illegally at a legal point of entry, that is not a crime according to this. And so there's so many different things that were said that were just flat out wrong.
So when you look at the totality of 2060, do you have an expectation when the voters read this on the ballot? Because that's going to be a big piece of this, is how it's written on the ballot. Are they going to understand what they're voting for and voting against?
Well, we're gonna get the message out there, and I would expect and I would ask that everybody actually look at the bill and see what it actually does. First of all, and I know it's all new, and there's some confusion between what Biden did yesterday as well, and what we did, at least for some of the people that I've spoken with. So I think when people understand this is about proving probable cause, this is about punishing fentanyl dealers that are killing people, and making sure that people don't falsify documents to get public benefits, then I think they're going to vote for it.
The other concern that was voiced to me was about the process, and I was talking with Danny Seiden from the Chamber of Commerce, and he said that they're more concerned about the process than the policy, meaning the way that this would affect the Constitution of Arizona and changes that might need to be made in the future, and how difficult that is because it's done through the ballot initiative versus through the legislative process and signed by the governor.
So, I mean, on that point, look, we've been talking about this, as I said, from the beginning of this session. I've been very upfront about what's going to happen. I've stated what's going to happen this session, that we're going to do something on this, and everyone was invited to be part of that discussion. Now, many really just haven't participated. And the other part of this is I would have loved to be able to do this through the regular legislative process and to get the governor's signature. But the governor talked big on immigration and on border security at the beginning of the session during her State of the State. But she hasn't actually done anything. She has not engaged with us at all on this policy. The only thing she has done is veto the individual bills that we've sent up there. And so that wasn't an option. Our only other solution, and I'm not a big fan, I'll be honest with you, about sending things to the ballot, because then we can't change it. It's things that happen in the future that little technical fixes that need to happen all of a sudden become very, very difficult, if not outright impossible for the legislature to fix. And so I actually agree with all those points, but this is an issue that's so big and so important that we have to do something about it. And so that's why we've chosen to go this route.
When it comes to the cost, hypothetically, this passes in November, but then it would be the next session of the legislature where it was going to look a different makeup, different people. Some people are leaving and staying. But do you believe that the legislature or the governor's office, after it passes, will put the money in so that these border counties are not burdened with that money? Is there a possibility that you would allocate money for the enforcement of 2060?
I would expect that would happen. Because, again, our record, especially from the Republican caucus, has been to prioritize the border. I mean, of course, in the final year of Governor Ducey, as you know, I was there. I was part of negotiating that budget. We put, $500 million into a pot for border security, and that a good chunk of that money is still there and still available. So our record, again, speaks for itself on that point, and I would expect the legislature would continue to make this a priority.
Yeah, so if the voters say yes to this, that they're not just going to leave border counties on the hook for all of this.
I would 100% expect that. And not only that, but remember, this is a tool in the toolbox. It doesn't mean there's nothing in the bill that forces a county to use that particular tool. If all of a sudden they realize that their jails are full, for example, and they can no longer take people, there's nothing saying you have to continue to enforce this particular law.
I want to talk about the budget, though, because I think that's got to be the big elephant in the room now, is getting the budget passed. We're concerned about a budget shortfall. There's going to be a protest at the Capitol today of people that don't like the expansion of the voucher program, the ESAs. They believe this is contributing to budget deficits. Where are we on the budget? Are we close to getting a budget passed and one that the governor will agree to?
Well, I am hopeful that that we are very close. I can't tell you the specifics because I'm sworn to secrecy here in terms of where we are, but we are very, very close on agreeing to the line items. Now, in terms of process, what that means is that the governor, the Senate president, and I sit in a room, and it is the three of us plus our sort of key staff individuals that join us, and we go through the budget line by line and 300 plus lines, and we try to negotiate a budget that makes sense. Now, first of all, it's important to note that it has to be a balanced budget, meaning that we can't spend more money than we have, and that's incredibly important. And then, and some of these line items, I think everybody knows where everybody stands, right? We, and myself, of course, since I'm the original sponsor of the ESA expansion, I'm going to protect that. And that's something that I'm not going to negotiate on. Now, the other side wants to attack it. They've been very clear about that. I will say that, remember, the duty of the state is to provide educational opportunities and to make sure that every child has an educational opportunity. It doesn't say it has to be through a public school. I'm not anti-public school, never been anti-public school, but I do believe in competition, and I believe competition will make everything better. As such, I would expect that there would be nothing significant changed on the ESA program.
When you hear the complaints, and some of them sound legitimate even to me, and I'm as much an advocate for the ESA program and expansion as you are, when people are saying there are expenditures happening within that program that have nothing to do with an education for the average student, and those need to be stopped, and they're saying that the expansion is actually costing so much money it's contributing to deficits in the public school system. How do you address that?
Well, first of all, the public school system and K-12 education is the biggest single line item anyway in the state budget. It's well over half of our state budget goes directly to that. So, and it's increased, I don't know, 40-50% since I've been in the legislature. Only a little over 6 years now. So we've actually put quite a bit of funds outside of the ESAs into the K-12 system. But the answer is always more. We always need more, always need more. And I get the reasons why. I mean, everybody's dealing with inflation and so on, which again, federal government's fault. But we'll leave it at that. But going back to the sort of the heart of the question, the reality of it is I'm open to any sort of discussions on if there is an expenditure that's not allowed. Okay, that's fine. Let's figure out a way to restrict that. Let's agree to it. But what I'm not okay with is the tactic of the left and sort of the hypocrisy there, which what they're saying now is we support the original limited ESA program, which was for special needs students, but now they're using those types of expenses, something that was approved for, say, a child that has is on the spectrum, has some educational issues. They're using that example to attack the entire ESA expansion amount, and that's not what the average ESA student is using.
And for the people to understand, ESA is empowerment scholarship accounts. Originally, they were designed so that parents of special needs students could allocate educational funds in any way they saw fit to best suit their special needs students' education. Whatever was best for them, the parents would know best, go and do it. It was expanded to all students and available. And so what they're saying is some of the expenditures that are being used by special needs families that would not be used by mainstream students. And they're saying that's an example of an expenditure that shouldn't be allowed.
Correct. In addition to that, they're attacking things like musical instruments. Well, why are you buying a piano or whatnot? Well, schools buy pianos. I mean, if you think about it, like that's you can go to band. Those are instruments that are provided. There are certain sports equipments that provided in schools that they purchase. Technology of all kinds, laptops, iPads, all those types of things are approved and are used by everyone in a public school, in a charter school, private school. It doesn't matter. So a homeschooler would be able to do the same thing. So again, I think if we're going to have this discussion, more than open to it. But let's be fair.
So then when you look at the overall budget, because I'm with you on the ESA program, I believe that school choice is here to stay. That is a very popular asset for many parents. I don't think it's going anywhere, but I agree that it should be as best as we can possibly make it. But in the other aspects of the budget, the concerns about revenue to the state, what the longer term look at Arizona, are we in a good place in Arizona? Is our budget secure? Are we going to be bringing in enough money to pay for the things that we're projecting we need to pay for?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So look, we're in a little bit of a lull over this fiscal year and the year after that. But after that, in year 3 and beyond, we're looking very good from a state revenue standpoint. And the only reason we're in this lull to begin with is because we've quite frankly overspent. So we cut rates. I admit. I mean, I'm the one who designed the flat tax and got it passed. So I'm responsible and proudly so for doing that. But we've also increased spending during that entire time. And so now what we're going to be doing for the next couple of years is doing a little bit of trimming, but mostly just deferring a lot of the other types of projects that we were dealing with before. And so we just have to slow down and let the revenues catch up.
When you look at some of the other things that have come up in the last, Maricopa County, the city of Phoenix has seen this huge uptick in heat-related deaths. A lot of that has to do with fentanyl addiction. But on a state level, Arizona is having to deal with unhoused people and also dealing with heat-related deaths. It's a responsibility. People say that the state has to allocate money. It looks like DPS is dramatically understaffed. Is there a way, are we looking at those things in the budget in the future of how do we fix those issues and stay within our budget?
Sure. Well, I can tell you that DPS is going to be one of those areas, and just law enforcement in general is going to be one of those areas that, from a Republican caucus perspective, we are not going to be willing to cut. Because for all the reasons that you mentioned, those are incredibly important, and we need to make sure that we have the resources necessary to do a good job at the basic functions of government. And those would be things like public safety and also infrastructure. Those are going to be areas that we're going to want to protect. And I would expect, again, without getting into the details of the budget, that you can hold us to that.
So my last question has to do with the working environment. We've seen, some of the back and forth on social media, some of the outbursts on the floor, but just can you give us a little look behind the curtain? Is there a good working relationship between the Republican and Democratic caucus in the House? And is there a good relationship with the governor's office when you try to negotiate serious things like the budget?
I can say that behind closed doors, that cooler heads have prevailed, and that we do have honest conversations, and that generally people keep their word, which is very important. Because if that wasn't true, we couldn't have these. We couldn't honestly have discussions. Now, there are individual members that unfortunately have gone way beyond what is acceptable and have violated really rules of the House and have also broken decorum. And that is unacceptable. And quite frankly, that should be unacceptable to anybody. I don't care if they're on your side or not of a particular issue. The reason is the legislature is not a place for activism. If you want to be an activist, that's great. Go out there, organize people, protest, do whatever it is that you want to do. There's a role for that in our democracy, and I'm 100% behind that, but not on the House floor. And the reason is, by definition, we're supposed to find ways to get together and to fix issues and to compromise. I know that's sometimes a bad word, but we have to find ways to compromise to get things done. We have a House and a Senate that's Republican controlled, the Democrat that is in charge of the ninth floor of the governor's office, and so it's incredibly important that we actually find a way to get to a budget that we can all agree to, because we can't do it without each other, right? That's the reality. So it's important. I would say. Final thought on this would be just to make sure that everyone starts paying attention to, because I don't think it's healthy at all to have outbursts on the floor.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the time as always, and especially appreciate you coming down to talk about these issues.
Thank you. It's been an honor.
Thanks for watching the Mike Broomhead Show. Catch up on Amazing Arizonans, a KTAR News podcast, and click the button in the middle to subscribe.